Right, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our Overview and Scrutiny panel. I've just clarified why we've now transformed, for want of a better word, from a committee to a panel. Apparently, a committee has decision-making responsibilities, a panel does not. We merely ask the questions. That's why we're here today. So welcome to you all, and a particular welcome to people on YouTube who may be viewing this virtually. We'll go to item 1 of the meeting to receive apologies for absence, please.
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillor Cornwall, Councillor Purser and Councillor Hewlett.
Thank you. And Councillor Carrott.
Thank you, Chair. Although I'm here, as I've said earlier, I must go at 2:30. My apologies for that.
Thank you. Item 2, the previous minutes on pages 3 to 14. You've all had an opportunity of looking at those minutes. If you'd like to deem them to be a correct record, I will sign them later.
Chair.
Or if there are any amendments or comments, Councillor Booth.
Thank you, Chairman. On item OSC for 4021, the first bullet point in the first sentence talks about the fact that I expressed the view more research needs to be done. I don't think that was the point I was making. I think the point I was making is it was taking a long time, and I knew that there was further stages to go through. But I personally don't think we need to do more research because I think we just need to get on and get the project done. So
we'll have that point amended. Thank you. Any other comments? And I will sign those with a true and correct record of what took place on that particular occasion. Thank you. Item 3 is to report additional items for consideration which the Chairman deems urgent by virtue of special circumstances be now specified, and I have none. Item 4, members to declare any interest in the local code of conduct in respect of any item to be discussed at this meeting. Do we have any, please? There are none. Item 5, updates on previous actions. Members will have in front of them a sheet or sheets on update on previous actions, pages 15 to 24. Are there any comments on those, please? I'd like to thank Member Services for the way they produce these particular actions. I think they're very concise. And as items are complete, we will now move on to items that are not complete in future. But thank you very much for the way you compile those. Right, item number 6 on the agenda. Yes, I'm sorry, Councillor Scanlon.
So the update will come here.
Thank you, Councillor Scanlon. That's use your microphone.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Booth, that one. Thank you. We'll move on to item number 6, an update on the CPCA growth service. It's my great pleasure to welcome today to the meeting Anna Goodall, Richard Curder, Ed Coleman, and Simon Jackson. Thank you very much for attending. And I believe virtually we have Fliss Miller and Anne Wardell, at least I hope we have. I would ask if a presentation is going to be made on this particular item. Yes. And then we'll have questions afterwards. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We know that our portfolio holder, Councillor Benny, would welcome this opportunity to share with members of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, or panel, beg your pardon, panel, the importance of our ongoing relationship with CPCA. You'll hear today how the CPCA's business support contractor Growthworks is delivering in Fenland. As a council, we do have a very effective working relationship with the CPCA and our economic growth team, myself, Anna and Anne, you've heard, in particular work with officers at the CPCA very closely at both strategic and operational levels. So we'll look at some examples of where we're working together. Next slide, please. We are still key consultees on the emerging economic growth strategy. This is a refreshed strategy from the local economic strategy that's currently ongoing, but this is an important refresh, and it sets out the CPCA's priorities for economic growth, including Fenland's role within delivering those priorities. The primary objective of this, of the growth and skills strategy is to reduce inequality both within Greater Cambridgeshire, the Fens and Greater Peterborough, whilst increasing productivity and output to create the jobs and higher wages needed to do so. It also highlights important projects which might attract funding in the future, so it is important that we are fully engaged with this strategy. The employment and skills strategy, again, we are key consultees on this strategy. One of the aspects that we find when we visit local businesses, including with Councillor Benny, is one of the key issues they face is labour shortage. So not only skills shortages, but actually difficulty in getting people through the door to start to work with them. Now, that's not uncommon in lots of locations across the UK. In fact, it might be across the UK and indeed Europe. But it is an increasing issue within the district, and one which, with the support and projects within this employment and skills strategy, we hope to address, as well as, of course, the underlying skills issues that we know that the district faces. Support is also available to businesses from Growthworks, and we're going to hear some more from the Growthworks team in a moment. But again, we work very closely with the Growthworks team to ensure that the support that's available is implemented effectively in Fenland, and that's specifically since Growthworks commenced its service last year. And you'll be hearing about how we work together in a moment. And I'm also just going to mention one case study just to amplify how we work together. Grant funding, including growth deal projects, transport and growth, growing Fenland funding. Significant amount of funding for economic growth in Fenland comes via the CPCA. This includes the growing Fenland funding of £1 million for each of the 4 towns in the district. We've also worked with CPCA in submitting bids to central government, for example, for the Community Renewal Fund. And we currently have live right now, members hopefully will be aware, this what's called the Start and Grow programme, the business support for local people to help them to start a business, and for those in early stage businesses to help them to grow. And that Start and Grow programme is bringing in just over £830,000 worth of funding for that programme into Fenland. Levelling Up Fund and Shared Prosperity. Again, we're working with CPCA and College of West Anglia on a proposal to be considered for inclusion in the Wisbech Levelling Up Fund bid to central government, and the CPCA is likely to be providing around £2 million of matched funding to support this bid. In the future, significant funding for economic growth will be available through shared prosperity, and hence we'll be working very closely, unsurprising, with CPA and CPA colleagues to secure as much of this funding as possible to support our economic growth plans for Fenland. Can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So I said that I'd briefly mention an example. You know, these are all useful words, hopefully, but you may have gone forward one more than you should have done. Could you just pop back one? That one, yes, thank you. So I now know why I should have had bifocal bifocal glasses, Chair. I apologise, I'm squinting at that. I can see this perfectly, but I'm squinting at that. Anyway, I did mention that I'd say how, provide a brief example. Indeed, I know colleagues will mention this one as well later, about how we work together operationally. And this is based on a company called Turmeric, which has recently come into the district. So I'm not going to read all of the bullet points out there, but basically we work very closely. This is on Bartlett's facility that we know that Bartlett's closed their existing operation and is now as you'll have seen from the signs, probably as you passed it, a business park, very successful business park, and indeed demonstrates the level of local demand for business space, for that type of business space. In the district and certainly in and around Chatteris, that they are virtually fully occupied, and more plans are afoot for future development there. But in terms of this company, we were approached by this company. They were looking for space. We put them in touch with Bartlett's, which is key part of our role. Got that negotiation going, and the end of the story, of course, is that they are now occupying space within the Bartlett facility. But more than that, and importantly, we engage with our colleagues from GrowthWorks, both their inward investment team and also their business support team. And you can see there that not only business support was provided for the company to help them and support them, but also grant funding. If you'd like to go to the last slide, please. And you'll see there that again, more growth is planned, more employees, and a quote there from if you follow football, you may well recognise that name as a Premier League, ex-Premier League footballer, Robson Kanu, so again, he's provided a very, very nice quote to say, you know, he's really grateful for all the work that's been done so far, and goes so far to say it's been very professional, which we're very pleased with. So that's just one of many practical examples of how, on an operational level, we work very closely with CPCA and specifically with GrowthWorks colleagues. Thank you, Chair. Thank you. I hand it over now to, if you want to my colleagues from GrowthWorks.
So we can move on to the second stage, then we'll combine the questions later. So it's an update on this CPCA growth work service and the impacts in the future direction. Yes, thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Committee. So I'll do a very brief upfront, and then my colleagues from the actual GrowthWorks delivery team will get a bit more into the detail around what's been delivered and how that's done. I'm Steve Clark. I work at the CPCA. I just wanted to highlight that the GrowthWorks service was conceived under the local industrial strategy, which we developed obviously a couple of years ago. And we're currently in the process of developing a new economic growth strategy. And that will also have the skills strategy built in partly to augment it. The skills strategy having recently been approved by the CPCA board. And I don't know if my colleague Fliss Miller has joined the meeting remotely or not, but if there are any questions around skills, she'll probably be able to answer those for you. The reason for flagging the fact we're working on a new strategy, which we're working with all of the councils on at the moment, is to use that as a framework to work forwards for new funding opportunities like shared prosperity funding and any other government funding that comes along. And of course, what we're taking account of in a new economic growth strategy is the great work that the current GrowthWorks programme is in year one, now looking at year two performance. The learnings from that will be taken forward into this new strategy, and the interventions that are designed around that will be based on the current learning and actually improvements or focuses that we need to take account of in the new strategy. I've also mentioned there in this slide, there is of course in the background the existing investment projects, if you like, that CPCA has invested in. These are all adding to the picture around economic growth, and they're all either completed or well in train, well on the way to being completed. And as Simon has already mentioned, we've got some community renewal fund projects, which the guys here will talk about the delivery, but they're pilots which government are looking very closely at, particularly the Start and Grow. It's the biggest CRF award in the country. So some of the other government departments like DWP have got very interested in following those to see what happens, to inform shared prosperity. So we're getting some good attention all around that more localised startup support. Anyway, I'll stop there and let the guys who are at the sharp end on the operational side of GrowthWorks just cover a bit on year one. Thank you.
Thanks, councillors, and thank you for letting us present today. Yep, sorry. So I'll just reiterate, thank you for letting us present today. It's our pleasure to do so. I assume everyone's familiar with the program, but I will kind of highlight just briefly to start what it is. Before I do though, just to also inform you of a few changes. My name is Richard Cuter. I'm now the Program Director for GrowthWorks. Some of you might have heard of the name Paul Webster. He was the Program Director till last Monday. So it's been in the hot seat for a week, so to speak, but he's moved on to be the Trade and Investment Commissioner for the state of New South Wales in UK and Europe. And he was chosen as a result of the great work he's been doing in delivering this program, particularly his knowledge of inward investment, but also how government programs run. So his success is also our success, so we should be patted on the back for that. On that, it is, for me, a matter of continuing the great success we have. So GrowthWorks is a company that delivers the business growth services for the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority. We have direct responsibility for growth coaching, skills, inward investment, and also grants and equity. And today we're going to give you a highlight on all those particular areas. We are unique in terms of what we do. There is no other economic growth service like us in terms of the scale and delivering all those services under one umbrella in the country. So given what we have managed to achieve in the first year, it's a phenomenal success. And on that note, I'm happy to advise our performance in year one finished in great shape across all service lines. We hit our performance indicators of jobs. 17 of the 19 performance indicators were either met or exceeded. There were 2 that weren't, but they were within the reasonable limit we apply in terms of those. And there were some environmental circumstances which meant that we didn't, such as the diagnostics on the growth coaching side, COVID, and not coming out as quickly as anticipated for that had a big impact on that. We're now seeing that ramp up immensely in the second year as we can do more face-to-face, and also because there are other elements in terms of other funding we need to get to, particularly around the capital expenditure grants. We've reprofiled innovation relocation for years 2 and 3. But I'm going to spend the next period highlighting the success that we've had across the program. So in the middle, you will see the biggest highlight from that. So in the first year, we had a target of 509 jobs and apprenticeships across the region. We were able to achieve 1,008. We hit the jobs target across all the business growth services that we offer. Growth coaching was 302% above target. The skill service was 129%. Looking at apprenticeships, grants and equity was 121% above, and inward investment, we had a phenomenal return at 425% above target as well. So the key message is that year one, we had a great start. We hit those targets, and we're setting ourselves up to do the same in years 2 and year 3 of the contract. So I'll focus on growth coaching. So in the first year, you'll see that the target is lower than year 2 or year 3. This is in recognition that it doesn't run a linear path. We mobilised at the same time as delivering. Normally, if you're delivering one of these contracts, you have about a half year to mobilise and get it ready. Due for a number of reasons, such as funding not coming in on time or different sources of funding, we had to deliver the same time we were actually developing the infrastructure. So that's why it is weighted for years 2 and 3. But what that has allowed us to do is to get our processes in order to start to get the message out there about GrowthWorks and deliver. And we saw that definitely in the first year, where our actual job numbers were 302% about what we delivered for growth coaching, what the target was there. I mentioned the only thing that we were a little bit below, that was with the diagnostics. However, there was good reason for that, some beyond our control, an example of which was last year in October. We'd started with a lot of face-to-face diagnostics and really ramping up the events, but we went back into lockdown, so to speak, and the response generally isn't as good as if you capture people in there at the moment at a particular event. But we have a number of them coming up in the next few months, but also the upcoming period. However, we have a number of businesses that are on their coaching journey, and we'll follow them all the way through to their success. That will often feed other parts of the program as well, such as skills and grants. But we have a number of assignments as well. And as I said, there are a number completing their coaching journeys. So similar success, happy to outline with skills. We have created a number of apprenticeships in the region. We were above target for that. The additional learning and training outcomes as well, we've succeeded in that. It is a matter of empowering people to either reskill, get the skills that they need to join the workforce, or potentially people returning to the workforce as well. I'm happy to have been a part of that journey. That is making a material difference. As we heard at the outset at this meeting, that's a real issue in terms of finding the right people. The jobs are there, but they don't necessarily have the skills. So it's actually giving people the skills in order to do so. We've increased our SME engagement as well, and we are continuing with our CO23 action plans. So one thing that we have, and even though it's got the smallest budget, but we have had incredible success on, is the Inward Investment Service. One thing that is really important to call out here was traditionally with these inward investment services, people would rely heavily on DIT. However, if you look at how we've delivered the Inward Investment Service here, it's been GrowthWorks sourced with our local CPCA stakeholders. What's interesting to note is that we've all, in this particular service line, appreciate that the targets are nowhere near as high as they are for some of the others. However, we have almost already achieved our year 3 outcome of this. But that does not mean that we're going to rest on our laurels. We have approached CPCA for more funding for this service line. We want to double down here and increase our success. A perfect example, and we will revisit it slightly, but there are other examples, I'm glad to say, is the turmeric code. So the grants and equity service, as you're aware, this takes into a number of different funding lines. We did have a large pot of funding which we needed to mobilise and get out the door when we started by the end of March, and we only took the program on at the beginning of February. So that was a great success there. We were able to get most of that funding out to businesses to start using it. We have returned to a more steady approach in terms of issuing grant funding to ensure that the actual pots stay there for the whole year. The way that we do it is there is an investment secretariat with the business board as well, and we make sure that we pick the businesses that are in most need, but also going to have the greatest return in terms of jobs and return to the area. One thing to call out here, we do show it on a slide upcoming, is also we have a scorecard determining how we rate these businesses and ensuring that the levelling up agenda doesn't apply just across the UK, but applies across the region. That scorecard is weighted more heavily to the Fens, and we will show that in the next few slides. But once again, you know, the actuals in terms of the target. We've achieved over 100 jobs in excess of what the target was for the first year. People are receiving those grants. I did mention the innovation and relocation grants. We have reprofiled that to years 2 and 3 because the focus was getting the capital expenditure grants out the door. But we will expect those to pick up this year as well. And the, oh, sorry, Ed, no, so you were going to jump in?
No, I was going to say the other point to highlight on that is in terms of the inward investment success, we've had success in every one of the district council areas in terms of landing new inward investment into the region. So there is a concrete example in every district council area of how, either working with a local authority or the Department of Trade, we've been able to use those funds at our disposal to ensure the whole region benefits on that.
So that was the overview of the success of the whole program. And we're very pleased, and the business board is, in terms of reaching our contractual outcomes of the jobs and far exceeding what we had for the first year. We're now at the point where we're deep into our planning and delivery for year 2, leading into year 3 as well. It does ramp up exponentially. But that was as anticipated as we put in the programs, the teams, and the funding in place to do that. That was highlights of the core contract. The other thing worth calling out as well is that there are other parts and other opportunities to support the district councils, such as the CRF or the Community Renewal Fund, in order for us to deliver on that as well, and we do that. So there are other parts besides the core contract which are leading to greater outcomes in terms of jobs and apprenticeships. So in terms of how we deal with Fenland and what it means for yourselves in terms of the council and as councillors, we're also making it easier for you to have live real-time reporting of the program, so you can see for yourselves what we are doing and what we're adding to the region. We have developed specific tools. The CRM which we use, which is aligned to Cambridgeshire and the Peterborough Combined Authority, is called HubSpot. But from that, we've developed a specific tool called SiteLantern that will give you individual reporting, which you can break down by region and by district council. And once that, it's currently in beta, but once the testing with that is complete and we go live, we're very comfortable sharing that with you, and you will be provided logins so you can actually track progress. So you won't need to wait for our monthly reporting. You'll be able to see that on a live basis. That's it's updated overnight from HubSpot. So whatever's in our CRM, you'll be able to see, and also get a nice clean dashboard where you can break things down as well. So ignore the figures for now. This is what we currently have in there, but it's just an example. We are reviewing that. There is an element of companies which are unknown within the system. The way our system works is we use the company's registration number in order to pull that data. So we're just doing a bit where we're remediating the unknown, but they will be put into all those buckets, and we can break them down by the district council. So that's an example of what you see for the Fenland. You can see by company size, their revenue, the number of employees as well.
And we are working with Simon and Anne on where the anomalies come in from Companies House. For example, a recruitment company that happens to base all its staff on Companies House within Fenland, we know doesn't give an accurate representation of the workforce they actually have within the region. But because the data is pulled from Companies House, we are working with Simon and Anne to use that local knowledge to ensure that this is, an accurate and authentic representation based on that one source of truth from Companies House. But that's where that local knowledge that your team can provide to us is really important.
And that's just to follow up on Ed's point. That's something definitely worth saying. So we need to have a baseline, the gospel, so to speak, and that is Companies House, because that is what's reported. So things like total assets, net worth will be as per what they reported to Companies House, because that is legally once they report it to Companies House, what it is in terms of their accounts. Things like total employees, where they haven't indicated what their current total employees are, we will default to Companies House, but because we realise things change quite quickly within year, and it's not as simple as your total employees being what's there at the end of your last reporting year, we will update that anecdotally as we get it from the company itself or from other sources, such as Simon and Ian. So I mentioned this previously, but it's also, you know, I'm happy to share with you the scorecard as well, just to show that we are very much aligned to the levelling up agenda across the whole region, and we allocate different points depending on where in the region the company lies. This is obviously as a result of, you know, first call would often be Cambridge, but there are other areas which we want to encourage and foster that business growth, and also make sure that the system is set up to support them. So that's a high level of what our scorecard looks like, but you'll see that there are points for location, the heaviest weighting being to the Fens. Then we have other requirements in terms of scoring, which are aligned to the CPCA's focus and strategy. So that includes social inclusion, so community apprenticeships, but also environmental aspects as well. So what's also interesting to see here is in terms of where our capital expenditure grants have been going as well. You will see that we have deployed over £500,000 worth of funding to Fenland. We've had 7 grants awarded, and that at Fenland is in terms of where the grants are going is also higher than a lot of the other district councils as well. We have given a lot to Peterborough, but that is only because we've seen the higher level of applications there. However, as I said, the way the grant funding and the grant scoring works, it is weighted to the Fenlands. And for us moving forward, it is about working with yourselves to ensure that we are getting the right businesses coming into the region, but also applying for the grants as well, and making sure that companies within the region are aware that that support exists. And highlight this with this, but it goes without saying, this is for the capital expenditure. This is for really those businesses that need to set up facilities in order to get producing. We do have other grants as well, such as the nudge grants, which sit in other parts of the program, in growth coaching, which are for things like coaching, so businesses can get that growth support as well. But we see that breakdown there. The last kind of box is those revenue grants, we call them, or you might know them as nudge grants. Once again, getting the message out there in the region, there is that support there. People can use it to buy the appropriate coaching in order to supercharge their growth. But if they are looking for funding in terms of taking that next step, whether it be warehouses, factories, equipment, and they need that capital expenditure, we are there to support as well.
And then just to add, obviously, for the purposes of today, we've redacted the names of the businesses that have received those grants, which you'll see on the left-hand side. That information is provided and circulated amongst officers as well. So there is a working knowledge between both us and local economic development teams on where that money's going, what the forecast jobs return, and how they're reporting against the grant award as well.
So I think this is a good point in order to call out some specific FENS examples across the program. You know, we've mentioned the turmeric code before. Ed, I don't know whether you wanted to run through the examples.
Yeah, sure. So this just gives you a flavour of the different types of companies that have benefited from the programme so far. And we're starting to get to that stage now where we're really working with companies to use the success stories we've had over the last year to generate a bank of case studies for lead generation. Because the challenge with programmes like ours is always making sure that there is market awareness of exactly what's on offer. Because I think, especially over the last over the last 12 months, there's been a lot of grant schemes floating around from either central or local government linked to COVID. And I think what we're trying to do now is use the success stories to move that narrative on a little bit and to show direct examples to entrepreneurs about how they can access this funding. So these are snapshot case studies, but you'll be seeing more come out as we start to see results and deliverables from that first round of funding. So the Turmeric Co is a great example. The initial lead came from your economic development team into us, working with the Combined Authority. You've got these in the pack, so I don't intend to go through them in too much detail, but you'll see there the challenge, the solution, and then how we work together to overcome it. The interesting and the exciting point here, which shows the scale of the programme at its very best, is now the Turmeric Co are at that stage. They're now looking at expanding into new markets, and through the delivery consortium's wider contacts, we've been able to link them in with the Department for International Trade's local team in Germany, which is what they've identified as their next growth market. So that's a great example of how the whole programme and those service lines come together to benefit the business.
Yeah, there's also another example where we support across our service lines and what we do, and connect them to other businesses on patch in order to fuel their growth. Another example is Getty. They are a hyper-local delivery service. So their kind of motto is you can get what you want within 15 minutes. They've got a massive presence in London. They have come through through the Inwood investment team, but through another area within the CPCA regions. However, we have put Turmeric Co in touch with them as a supplier, so their products will be supplied throughout the UK, and that was because we are going beyond necessarily what's in the box, so to speak, and making sure we have those connections to continue to fuel their growth from multiple angles.
And here's just another example of a slightly different sort of business. This challenge here was very much around marketing. So this is one of the specialist sector support we can offer. So around not only the capital expenditure support, but also at a revenue and coaching level. This is an example of how a growth advisor has been able to identify with the business a specific skill set that was lacking in the business and something that was holding them back, and how we've been able to employ targeted specialist resource into that area. And I think this gets to the heart of GrowthWorks is about giving people the support they need from our menu of services. It's not about trying to give people everything. It's about getting an understanding for what they need, what the business or the client needs, and giving them what's relevant. And I think that's where the service comes into its own, because it's targeted and it's relevant. It is not a one size fits all. And that is one of the reasons why we've seen the success we have in the first year, and something that as we scale and reach more businesses, we will be very keen to keep. And then on that wider social point, this is an example of how GrowthWorks is able to contribute to the net zero agenda and the Mayor's 3 Cs agenda as well. So while we are all about economic growth and sustainable growth and inclusive growth, we know we also have that role to play in the journey to net zero, and actually seeing it as not just a cost in getting to net zero, but a business opportunity as well. And one of the things that's been very eye-opening from our work with new market entry into clean tech, but also some of the work that's already being done on patch, is there are brilliant opportunities within this space to drive growth as businesses look to become more sustainable over the coming years. So it's not necessarily just a cost, it's actually an opportunity for businesses already here, but also for the region to bring new businesses in to our target markets as well. And as we start to generate more case studies, we will of course share them with you over the coming months as well. This is just some specific market feedback from people who've happily given us quotes. We're starting to build this into our reporting as well, just to show that human side of the programme, so we start to get beyond the statistics a little bit on the scorecard, because absolutely what we do is around improving the lives of workers, learners, and helping entrepreneurs to turn those dreams into reality. And sometimes on a scorecard, while the job numbers are important, you can't always capture that, and we're aware of that and are looking to build that into to how we interact and report back, not only to the combined authority, but to the constituent councils and the business board as well.
So we mentioned before that, and the reporting at the start was just on the core contract, so to speak. However, where other opportunities present themselves to support businesses and individuals in the region under our program, we have been looking to support and actually do that as well. Two of the big ones which are currently occurring and the teams are working on are related to the Community Renewal Fund. One is Start and Grow. The second one is Turning Point. Steve and Fliss, I don't know whether you guys wanted to jump in here or to give an update or more of a flavour on it.
Yeah. Sure, yeah, I'll cover off the Start and Grow. So as the slide shows you there, it's targeting people who are obviously either pre-start or have already started but are a very early stage, less than 3 years old. The programme, whilst it's only a pilot programme to the end of June, it aims to test obviously the market quite strongly. What we're hoping to do here is not only obviously pass on quite a lot of financial support through grants, we're also running workshops and mentor support for those businesses, which then can be translated and forwarded on beyond the programme. The performance today is going quite well. Government took such a long time to actually tell us we've been awarded the money, so we've only known since the beginning of November, and we've had to put all the contractual stuff in place. So we had if you like, an at-risk start just from Christmas onwards, and to date we have 152 leads currently in the Start and Grow programme, of which, sorry, I'm just check the number here, of which currently in Fenland we have 21 on the programme, and yeah, currently 12. So 12 pre-starts and 9 existing startups that are less than 3 years old currently in the programme. But demand is strong, and that's with no real marketing as such. That's all kind of kicking in now. There is an awful lot of activity going on with the Fenland economic team now around various activity and routes to market, also with Job Centre Plus. And we also have a CRF advisor on the startup programme, actually based in Fenland, who's been employed onto the programme. So as mentioned, there are a series of workshops and webinars that people go through, but currently we have 58 applications for the actual grants in process. I should add here, it's a very important point, 3 local authorities are providing match into this programme with their ARG programme, FDC being one of those, with 200,000 in the programme, which will be used on that first tranche of grants, which are imminently to be issued in the next sort of days and weeks. So yeah, I think that's it's started. It's the pipeline is strong, and we're quite confident that we can deliver what we signed up to do, which is an overall 3.4 million package across Fenland, Huntingdonshire and Peterborough. And the programme is being evaluated. It was from day one, and it's continuously being evaluated to feed back up to government what the learnings are from this particular pilot. I'll hand over to Fliss maybe on the...
I am here. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah.
Brilliant. That's good then, isn't it? Apologies that I'm not with you. It's a very busy National Careers Week for us here at the Combined Authority. So Turning Point, this is very much focused on helping employers get talent that they need, trying to take away the risk. And so we're offering a number of free internships, so paying £5,000 to businesses to therefore make sure that they are paid internships. And this can be at any level. Often internships are seen as for people starting out their career, but we wanted to make sure, especially when this was due to come in at the end of furlough, that people who are mid-career would be able to take that opportunity without losing an income. So there are a number of parts of this. So we have the paid for internships. We're also looking to pay for some courses as well. There's normally a number of caveats for why people funded or not funded through courses. So there's also £600 towards a cost of a learning opportunity. And in addition to that, we're also providing that careers advice to individuals and also some training needs analysis to businesses as well. And it will be a supported internship as well. So therefore businesses will have the additional support in how best to use the internship. And so far we have 56 businesses within Fenland who are in the application process in making use of these opportunities so far. And again, as Steve said, this is a pilot project, and should it be successful, then we would look to take this forward into the new round of Shared Prosperity Fund. Thank you.
Thanks, Bliss. And I think just to summarise on both those programmes, as Steve said, they've both been mobilised at pace through a very condensed timetable, thanks to when the funding award was. What you'll now start to see is the marketing and the lead generation for those programmes amplify. And it would be great to have both support at council level, but also as local councillors in terms of being the eyes and ears on the ground and knowing your wards. If there are businesses in your patch that you think would benefit from getting involved, please do feed them into us, because the more people that know about these programmes, the better. And it would be great to have that two-way flow of potential businesses that could benefit from either turning points or start to grow.
And just to build on what Ed said, that very much echoes across the program. You know your wards, you're there, you're speaking to businesses every day. You do feel that businesses could benefit by our services, by all means, feed them in. We're very happy to work with them. That brings us to the close of the presentation, so very happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you very much for that detailed presentation. I will open up for questions from the panel. Councillor Counts.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for allowing me to ask my questions first. I have to leave at 1:30, which makes it difficult. So thank you for that. I saw the presentation before, so I had some questions about that, but it was actually some of the things that came out from the discussion that I found more interesting, and I want to just concentrate on them. And I'm looking at this through the lens of Fenland District Council, not through the lens of the Combined Authority or Peterborough or anywhere else. And it's kind of got the flavour of what are you doing for us running through as a thing. And there were some good things I heard, like the weighting, so you can give more to the CapEx project. So I understood that if you change the weighting and the scoring, that means that we will feature more highly in Fenland, and therefore we will get more projects. But I heard some quite distressing things. So, for example, at the actual amounts of money given out so far, we had actually been given more money than some of the other councils, but less than others. And that was regarded as not too bad a thing. The point about the levelling up is we actually need to be getting more here than anyone else. We cannot close the gap whilst we are middle of the pack, near the top of the pack, at the bottom. You know, we're in the middle, and we not only need to get more than anyone else, we need to get significantly more than anyone else. So one of the things I think you were going to take away was interrogate your data to see what overall effect it's having. And despite that wonderful weighting of 10, it's not having the desired effect, because actually at the end of the day, if we're honest about levelling up, we have to be number one, not just this year, next year, but every year for years to come. There are hurdles you're going to face if you try and achieve that, but I do hope you will. And the hurdles are what we get, somebody else doesn't. So there will be tension at the Combined Authority. But if everybody's honest about levelling up, there can only be one authority that needs to be getting more than others. And I say it's Fenland, not because I live in Fenland, but the facts bear it out. Yeah, absolutely, without a shadow of doubt. I took time during your presentation to look up the productivities for the area. And the productivities measured in pound per hour as a smooth out GVA. It's about £26 per hour for Fenland. The next lowest scoring was about 33 for Peterborough. East Cambs was similar. And then Huntingdonshire a little bit higher. South Cambs up there and Cambridge City, £36. Now the difference between £26 and £33, £7 doesn't sound very much. Let me throw that on its head a bit. That's about a 27% increase. So if you said to everybody in Fenland tomorrow, you're going to get a 27% increase in your wages from tomorrow, because that's what productivity means, that would change the lives of Fenland. All right, and that's what we're facing. So it's not because I live in Fenland that I'm making this plea, but the obvious outcomes for a Fenland resident across the board is that they have to be at the top of that list every single year for many years until we see that gap close. So it's a very much a plea about what to do next. I was quite surprised at all of the programmes having that combination of Peterborough, Huntingdonshire and Fenland, because there was nothing Fenland specific. And yet, as I've said, the GBAs for Peterborough and Huntingdonshire, they do have pockets of deprivation, are much higher than Fenland. So why is there something not more targeted than Fenland above those two, who are only marginally behind South Cambs? In fact, HDC is ahead of East Cambs, so I was quite surprised at that. And the last point I'd really like to make at this point is growth. There's a huge amount going on here, looking at growth through the lens of what can we do to upskill people, right? And one of the comments that came out is everybody is looking for skilled labour. But another avenue for growth, which didn't come out of the presentation, I'm not sure where it is actually growth through removing people from the chain or utilising your people in new ways by putting in automation. And that's where you can really get some CapEx growth going. We've got huge companies here doing food processing. Has anyone been around their inside their buildings with a free assessment of a production engineer saying, actually, we could take that line of 50 people out, replace it with something, and then we could upskill those people into a different area of work? Because that, for me, didn't come out as a flavour from the presentation, but it would make a huge difference, not just for Fenland, but the whole area, if we had a productivity expert able to look at these various different areas. So so good work going on, but from the eyes of Fenland, I'd like to see a lot more prioritised impact, and not sure how you're going to go about that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for those. They're all really valid questions, and I think the point where, you know, cards on the table from our side, lead generation for the programme is one of the biggest challenges that we face. So in terms of those food manufacturers that would benefit from the service, so the obstacles we're trying to overcome internally are around almost what have the Romans ever done for us, because there's this perception that it is yet another government funded, national or local funded program that's going to come in and tell us how to do things, and that's absolutely not what we're here for. It's overcoming those stereotypes, I think, around some of the support programs, and that's where developing the relationships with you as a council, with your officers and with you as councillors is something that now, as we go into year 2 and 3, we see as being really important to now enable us to do that. There's only so much marketing we can do, whether it's through digital lead generation, but actually that local awareness and helping us to get a foot in the door is something that I think over years 2 and 3 we need to put greater emphasis on, so that we're able to target that support in our service offering where it really matters. Rich and Steve want to add anything to all of the other points raised there?
Yeah, I would like to add the point about investing in automation and innovation. I think that is something, because we were in the original concept and design of GrowthWorks, there was going to be another stream which was all around funding and support to companies to attract innovation funding. That unfortunately didn't come through in the end because of the envelope of funding. You know, something had to give in terms of what we were able to secure for the overall package. As I said, it was 26.3 million in the end, made up of lots of different funding streams. Unfortunately, that particular element couldn't be funded, but it's not to say that it can't be when we look at what we do with the service next and shared prosperity funding, which we've mentioned a few times. These could be areas of bolt-on, if you like, to add to this. To the point about Fenland, we know the levelling up agenda has come since we designed the service. has come through and has moved on quite a long way. So I think you're entirely right. I think anything new we do now is likely that the focus is going to be what are we doing for Fenland. With the Community Renewal Fund, it was Fenland and Peterborough that government picked as the priority places. Huntingdon got tagged on because they wanted to join in to the project. And we were able to do that under the program, but the primary focus had to be majority delivery in the 2 priority places. So yeah, we will be looking to do those things. I like the idea of actually someone as an expert who can go consult on, because one of the things we have run through things like our agri-tech scheme, which is now closed, is we have given grants out for businesses to invest in new technologies and automation, but of course, some of those are very proof of concept, don't always translate into what we want to see. Some have, you know, the investments have created the right kind of conditions for more productivity, better value jobs. So there's a balance to be struck, and I think it is through that, as you say, expertise looking at that. So we'll take all those points on board.
Yeah, so just to build on that as well, I think there are some things in terms of how we kind of pitch Fenland as well, which you know, the productivity is actually a very, very big point. Something particularly we need to see for inward investments. To Ed's point, there's a bit about coming over perhaps some reticence for businesses which may have been approached a lot of times before to deal with kind of government funded programs. And that's where we do need to build the relationships with yourself as well. But also in terms of building those relationships, the feedback loop, where we've been trying to push people to the Fens and perhaps have chosen other areas for other reasons, which kind of we can't control within the program, feeding that back into you as well to say, okay, these are perhaps the things that we can work with you on to see how we close those gaps and make it more appealing for them to do business here as well.
I don't know if Liz wants to add anything on the skill side, because that's there's a lot of skill stuff going on that is just targeted Fenland.
Yeah, we work very closely with providers. You'll be aware that we are supporting through the local growth funds, the North Cambridgeshire Training Centre based at Metalcraft site in Chatteris. As Simon's already alluded to, we're also supporting the development of higher level skills in putting forward a bid with the College of West Anglia. We've also got a number of adult education innovation pilots, which are specifically targeted within the Fens as well. And I can provide additional detail following this to show you the targeted interventions. A huge proportion of the adult education budget is now being targeted into Fenland, recognising, as you pointed out, the need that we need to invest in skills to change and shift the dial in the levelling up agenda.
Thank you. If I can just echo some of the thoughts regarding reticence for businesses to come forward and take advantage of some of these opportunities. I think I would advocate extremely strongly for the economic growth team, who have those close working relationships with those businesses, and can act as the conduit and interpreter in relation to some of those things. So, you know, we really can advocate on behalf of those businesses and make those links with the CPCA team. So, and that's worked really successfully, and we've got working examples of where that's the case. And as the team become further and further widely known throughout the districts, I can only see that becoming a further and further benefit to those businesses where that relationship already exists.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you. Councillor Wicks, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like some clarifications on some of your slides, and I go to the growth coaching service, and you say you've created 139 jobs. How many of those are in Fenland?
So we're currently just finalising that as part of year one reporting as to where those jobs will be. We weren't able to get it for today because we're still going through a final process with the businesses on exactly where those jobs are based. On that point we raised earlier around some of the head offices being in Fenland, but are the jobs actually in Fenland and vice versa. So we will have that as part of our year one reporting pack, which will be shown to the Combined Authority very shortly, and then we'll be able to provide you with that detail when we're confident that it's the right data.
Following on from that, you list 66 apprenticeships created. Again, how many of those are in Finland?
Can I come in there? So apologies, I don't have the detail on apprenticeships, but for learning outcomes, which is also part of that, currently nearly 20% of the learning outcomes across the whole programme have been within Fenland, and that is across 24% of the businesses we're engaging with across the whole of the project. So there is a specific focus on making sure that our teams are engaging with the businesses to make sure it has a big impact. But I will get those apprenticeship numbers for you. I just don't have them right now, but I will come back to you with those.
If in compiling that list, you can give us targeted information of what the apprenticeships actually were and at what age, that would be useful as well.
I can do. And if you would put like wider detail on apprenticeship starts within Fenland, I'll be able to give that to you by level, by sector. So I've got quite a lot of information. So wider than just the programme, I can also provide that for you as a committee, if that would be helpful. Sorry, as a panel.
Yeah. If I may carry on. While we all appreciate the situation that evolved at the Bartlett site, you highlight just one aspect of the Bartlett site. How much more of it is being developed for other businesses within the complete entity?
So within approximately 3 months, nearly 90% of the site had been let to various businesses. As I last find out, but I was off last week, so my colleague Anne might have even more up-to-date data. I think there were basically 4 fairly small units that were still available, but they may well have gone by now. But also, as part of the role that Anne in particular has undertaken, is to sit down with the Bartlett brothers and to try to persuade them that it would be a good idea, given the level of demand and given that they have land adjacent to them that isn't developed in terms of building space, that they could potentially therefore bring forward and create more building space. And I'm looking at Anne, if she's going to nod or not, but I believe that there's an application actually in or is imminent to do exactly that.
Right.
So that business park will in some time scale expand, because they've seen, you know, Anne and I have sat down, particularly Anne, at early days, and said to them there is significant demand. But it's one thing us saying that, it's another thing them actually seeing that, and so they've actually seen that now, and it's given them the confidence to go on and do more.
It's against the background of, I'm aware of a number of companies that either want to expand, i.e. they need to move location, or there are businesses looking for facilities within Fenland to retain their business in Fenland. If I can move on, the advertising of grants, where do people find the information? Because, you know, through COVID, we've had a lot of startups and entrepreneurship, and it's, you know, what assistance can they actually tap in, and what is the criteria for them to tap into it?
So
Yeah, so if I can just come in relation to the Start Grow initiative, we've recently put a flyer in each of the residential council tax bills. So they literally will have hit doormats today, I think the 7th. So that the widespread communication across the districts, and indeed through both Simon and Anne, the economic growth team. So we're actively engaging with those potential startup businesses, and they're approaching us. But as you're aware, 21 are already on the books without any fundamental comms around the initiative. So that, you know, we're anticipating that will grow significantly. Now we're on that, you know, right track in terms of that comms.
Right. Further on to that is, as a councillor, I've got no knowledge of it at all, and I'm dealing with companies out there. So it's against that background, surely the members of this group should be part and parcel to this, you know, communication stream.
And Councillor Wicks, just as all the residents of Fenland will receive that in their council tax bill, you will, but I do absolutely take the point that there is a point about proactive comms with elected members, so that you're well aware of that and can act as that conduit, again linking to CPCA and the growth service.
Councillor Scanlon, please.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wicks has actually stolen my thunder because it's exactly what I wrote to start with. And on what Councillor Count said about moving forward with technology, I totally agree. I worked for the past 50 years prior to becoming a councillor in engineering, and I've seen the progress from winding a lathe with handles to pressing a button and let it go in. So I do fully understand it, and I totally agree with what he says. Put an expert, get an expert to go into these companies and say, we can take that line out of people and put you in a machine. I've seen it done, and I know it can be done, and I think it's a way forward. And on what Councillor Wicks has just said, I've seen nothing. You've had a programme going, and I've seen nothing to present that programme to the members of the public or engineering. So I'm very disappointed that it hasn't been done, and it should be done now. Thank you.
We do, sorry, I'll just say, we do have a whole suite of materials, obviously, that we generated as we've built the year up in mobilisation. So I think what we need to do is obviously, we've been sharing this, but we need to kind of make sure you've got everything that's up to date, and then I'd imagine it's within the council to do its dissemination to all of the councillors.
Okay, sorry.
Specifically on the last point, read the engineering community, we are actively engaging at the current moment with the Welding Institute, so TWI.
Actually, you've just prompted me to add another point. Of course, the other big project we've got just over in Peterborough is the University of Peterborough, and we're developing. That's going to launch in September, but the curriculum that's being developed is engineering, manufacturing, and it's going to be employer-led courses. And so what I would encourage, and it's all happening now, is businesses getting involved with that, because, you know, this is where the higher end kind of skill sets are going to come from, and it's going to be an asset right on the doorstep that they'll be able to avail of. So I'll make that plug.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Hay, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Wicks also asked part of the question I wanted to ask, and it was specifically about Bartlett's site in Chatteris. It was a big blow to Chatteris when that site closed down. I believe there was about 300 employees at the time. Now you say it's nearly full. Do we know how many companies are on that site and how many employees overall they employ? And would it be possible for us to be given a list of those names of those companies and the type of business that they run? Also, I'd be interested to know how many of those businesses have qualified from grants or technical help through the growth works, not just on that particular site, but within Chatteris as a whole.
I'm looking at my colleague Anne, who might have a better heads up than I in terms of the number. I mean, we can get that for you, Councillor. That's not a problem, getting those details from Bartlett's. I don't know if Anne's got anything on the top of her head now.
Can anyone? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I haven't got the numbers. I think it's around about 8 companies. We have reached out to all the companies to arrange meetings with them. Some of it's had to take over Zoom or Teams. Not all companies have responded, but certainly for those companies, they have had at least information about growth works. If not an introduction, of course, we need their permission to do that, but we have made contact with every company that's gone onto the site. It varies from construction companies to packaging companies, and I think the largest occupant is Flowers, which has taken up most of the site.
Can I just come back on that? Because Flowers were originally in Chatteris, and then I believe that they moved to Alconbury, so they've now moved back in.
Yes, they've expanded, so they've kept Alconbury and they've taken on the additional space in Chatteris.
Because my understanding was that they were given money from the LEP to move to Alconbury together with UK Limited. So has that been claimed back?
Well, they've retained their facility in Alconbury, so this is an expansion, an extension to that facility. But I wouldn't know that, but that was a grant that was outside our remit.
I would know it because I used to work for the firm.
Councillor Booth, please.
Thank you, Chair. I ought to just make it clear that I have a role at Peterborough Regional College. It's part-time. I don't think it's prejudiced by any of the discussions today. I just wanted to pick up on the data. So I think obviously what you're giving us is headline figures here, but and this is the point I think I raised previously, is that you talk about jobs growth, but a lot of this would have happened organically anyway. And what I said at the time was we needed to have was a baseline of what we were expecting against what was actually going to be additional. So you say you created over 100 new jobs. A large element of that would have happened naturally anyway, because if people, businesses, they want to expand, they want to make more money. So do we have an indication of, how much growth is as a direct result of what you're doing versus what would have happened organically? Because the data doesn't really give us a feel for that. You talk about sort of 60 apprenticeships this year, but a lot of those probably would have happened anyway. So I just wanted to sort of reiterate or get a better feel, because what is the value add of this project, because this is tax funded, taxpayer funded money. How is the taxpayer benefiting?
So we're still working through with the Combined Authority at the moment how we quantify what the GDP benefit is against that baselining. Those discussions are taking place with the senior responsible officer and the programme director at the Combined Authority. At the moment, jobs created is the only figure we have, because we still don't know we're working in our reporting, and it will come out. And as time goes on, we'll be able to give you more detail about the level of those jobs as well. And that's the other part with the coaching, were those companies creating jobs that were paying 25,000 a year and are now creating jobs at a higher level or in different sectors. That's where we will get to, and we will be able to, probably not there yet because we're only a year in and some of these grants have only been paid out in the last few months. But once we are in a position to quantify that, we certainly will come back and do so. But those discussions are actively taking place between us and the programme board about what is the value add, what is the GDP benefit, and how do we quantify that and present it.
So are you expecting that on, say, next year's presentation, you'll be able to give us a better indication of that?
Yeah, for sure. And we're working at the more data we get all the time, but the more we talk to companies, the more we start to see the sector those jobs are in, the level those jobs are in, the level the apprentices are. We're starting to get data we haven't had before. So yeah, it's certainly it's developing all the time, and it's just at what point we're able to give you that exact GDP calculation is a conversation that we can confirm once we've had those conversations with the Growth Code board, which is the programme, the board responsible for the programme.
And I've got a number of questions, Chair, if I may. I think one of the figures you say you didn't quite hit was around the diagnostics for businesses, and you've got a target of around 3,300. Later in the presentation, you have a breakdown of the number of businesses, I think, in Fenland. Now, I don't know if that's example data or sort of nearly accurate data. That, to me, looks to be about 2,300 over the project period. So I guess the question is how do we ensure the data is accurate? And also, I think on the presentation of 6 largest companies, I think there's a duplicate entry there, because I think Denmark have obviously got more than one legal entity based at that site. So how do you ensure, for example, where there are duplicates, that you cross-match and you deal with that?
So on the first point around diagnostics, the what we've always worked on and where the 3,000 figure came from was about a 1 in 3 conversion, 3 to completing the diagnostics being enrolled in the program. We've actually probably outperformed the diagnostic conversion rate, which is a credit to the staff that are working with those businesses on a daily basis, which has led to us still hitting the target despite not hitting the diagnostic, because the conversion rate was better. We only record completed diagnostics, so we don't record leads for diagnostics, as it were, so people who've spoken to an advisor but haven't completed it, because that's where we start to get real data around the business, their growth challenges, and what we're starting to get now, actually, that we've just shared with the Combined Authority is some quantifiable data around the biggest growth challenges businesses are facing, and we're now going through and trying to present that by sector and by district council area, which is another example of sort of gaining more data all the time. And the diagnostic is it's a process that is ongoing. So the initial diagnostic, it was a set of questions that we felt enabled us to best help the business. That's an agile process, and that changes over time, because there's always that balance between getting enough data from the business to be able to help them, but also not taking up too much of their time so that they just switch off or don't complete it. And that's why we constantly change and update the forms. Do you guys want to take the second point around the wider data? So it's the diagnostic, sorry, and the second question was on. So it's site plan. Yeah. I was going to say that's where having the linkage and is critically important, and that's why we've set up the site lantern access into all of the data that we're using for all of the districts, all of the local authorities in the patch. Because obviously it's one thing to collect data and companies will tell you what they want to tell you and you've got a certain picture, but it's local intelligence on the ground that will tell you some of the reality. In terms of some of the activities we undertake, like grants, obviously there's quite a lot of due diligence goes underneath it to look at a firm, its directors, its credit, everything. And that's where you can sometimes see there's duplicate entries and different group firms and structures, and so that gets a look at. But we will be relying a lot on some of the local intelligence where the company will potentially give us rogue information and we try to re-verify what they're actually doing.
Do you not use tools like, looking for repeat data sets, that type of thing, like, the same address for a company to try and remove those duplicates?
Yeah, so the actual tool that we use both from an AML KYC perspective and a credit perspective is called Credit Safe. Companies run on that. We check for updates overnight, so every 24 hours, and every time we get an update from that, we will pull it. Now, the issue with that information is it's taken from known available sources such as Companies House. So we can only do on that basis what companies report, in which case we then need to rely on anecdotal evidence, which is what we get from the companies, but then also kind of working with the economic development side. There's an element where no matter what we try and what we do, and this happens across all institutions, and I know my background's in banking, is we can only know what we know, and we can't know what we don't know. So where possible, we will, and we will cleanse the data with the information that we have available and the information we're able to get in the region on patch.
Yeah, I think they're saying it's garbage in, garbage out, isn't it, with data?
Precisely. And we are trying to deal with that. We have implemented things whereby, for example, we've built an API from Credit Safe into HubSpot, the CRM, and then obviously that feeds all the way up into SiteLand, which is a tool you'll have to see the data. We believe we're being different as far as we're aware now. The economic growth, regional growth agencies doing things like that, but there is a challenge to, to mention what Ed said, continual improvement to get better. So we obviously do welcome the challenges to that from yourself.
And I guess want to reiterate, I think, the point that Councillor Count was saying about prioritisation of Fenland. So I think your loading factors probably need to be looked at there. If you've got a scheme where you're loading Fenland at the moment and we're only coming out on a par with existing neighbouring authorities, it needs to be looked at again and revisited. one of the other points I wanted to just raise was about the fact that you redacted where the money or grants has been paid to. So as I understand it, this is public money. If the people were to do a freedom of information request, would that information not be available because it won't be covered by GDPR? We've had a similar discussion recently, I think, regarding the COVID grants to businesses, because that is public money and it goes out through the public purse. So they can't rely on GDPR because they are not an identifiable person, because it's a commercial organisation, therefore it doesn't apply. So I just wondered, and also why aren't we maybe using that to promote the service to get more people in? I mean, I know you've done it with a couple of examples today, but surely the more we can say these are the organisations that are benefiting, the more it will drive people to the door.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's definitely why our marketing priority for this quarter is to get that case study bank and to get people who've had those grants talking to camera that are happy to be identified and be named and talk about it. We took a decision just to redact it today because we felt that it was there was some commercially sensitive things around grant schemes within those businesses. In terms of a freedom of information request, I'm not a data protection or a legal expert on that data, but in compiling the slides, we felt we would do so just so that it didn't come out in a public forum without the businesses being aware that we were doing it, because we want to keep that relationship with them so that when we look to utilise them in our PR and our lead gen, we've got that positive relationship. But Simon and Anne have absolutely got the unredacted version of that data. We do share it with our board, with the CPCA, with the business board, and with the economic development team. So it's not, we're not trying to hide that data. We just felt today wasn't the forum to release those names without giving the businesses a heads up we were doing so.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess probably the final point is just about this point of information being shared with councillors. It was a number of years ago, I think probably when the CPCA was being created, that the suggestion was forwarded that councillors should be business champions and that we should be going out there promoting services. It looks to me like nothing's really sort of emerged from that, and I think that's something that the district council needs to learn from and take forward.
Yes.
Yeah, if I can come back on a couple of those points, Councillor Booth. Firstly, in relation to the accuracy of information about businesses, obviously, I think it's fair to say that just in relation to the amount of information that we've gleaned about local businesses since the COVID pandemic has happened, and the amount of business grants that we've given out as a result of COVID and the various pots of money that have been available, the information that we have on businesses we've got far greater depth of information and far more accurate records now that the business growth team within Fenland District Council holds, and obviously our accountancy colleagues are aware of. So we've got far greater depth of intelligence and detail that we can then share appropriately with combined authority colleagues. And your second point about councillors being advocates and business champions, absolutely. And Councillor Benny, were he here today, is very proactive in the amount of engagement that we do with him and vice versa. He comes on visits with us. He's aware of those businesses that have had grants shared with, and we're keen to build on that network. So I take the point that Councillor Wicks made earlier, that maybe we've missed an opportunity on this occasion to proactively engage with members more widely before that comms has gone out to all residents, and I think we'll learn from that point and take that point on board moving forward.
Yeah, speaking of business intelligence, the present Ukraine crisis, will that impact on grant funding investment at the moment? Do we have any inkling of that?
So in terms of government, obviously it could do. Government may prioritise different budgets, but obviously they've produced their spending review, so we kind of know what we're looking at in the coming years. CPCA obviously has its own devolved budgets, and we know what they are in the coming 3 years. So I think in terms of private sector investment, though, that's a different matter, and it's yet to be seen whether it makes any of our businesses or any of those that are looking at the UK, in a particular area, makes them nervous or makes them change their minds about what they do or maybe hold back. Of course, with any situation, whatever it is, there's always pros and cons, and there's probably opportunities in them as much as there are other, you know, reasons not to do it. So I guess we have to wait and see how that plays out. Thankfully, I don't think we have, as far as I know, I don't think we have significant Russian investment into many of our companies in the patch, but of course we don't know that for sure. But I think it's C, Richard.
Yeah, so I'll take it from, so that's probably the macro view. I'll take it from the micro level. Every business that we do, we run AML KYC checks through. As I mentioned, the program that we use, Credit Safe. So if they, at any point, should they hit any sanctions list, that will be updated and then we'll withdraw funding. As far as I'm aware, we haven't had any sanctioned people apply. We have had negative adverse media, but to be honest, that was for nefarious stuff they've probably done locally. But as far as I'm aware, we don't have any Russian nationals or companies that have received grants that have any form of Russian ownership.
Thank you very much. I think the last question goes to Councillor Wicks.
Thank you, Chairman. Just come back on 2 points. Ever since the start of Mr. Jackson's appointment, I've been in contact with him quite regularly, actually pointing businesses to him. So a little bit disturbed that the information regarding the grants, you know, wasn't past my inbox. The last question I've got, and it relates to the comments that are made by the gentleman on Peterborough University. While the university is a valid educational path, there is not everybody whereby it is feasible or logical to pursue. And it is a case of, there are many aspects here, and one of them is actual skill upgrading, which is done outside a university. And it is against those. I've heard West Anglia College mentioned. I know Metalcraft are coupling with Ruskington University, but within Fenland, you know, upskilling is part and parcel of our business development. That should be, the paths should be visible and available to everybody. So it's against that background and the turning point. Where are these courses, and where do we find the knowledge of these courses so that we can actually point industry towards them?
Yeah, sure. So Fliss has unfortunately had to go, but it is within the work of the Growth Works to promote these courses. So we need to make sure you are aware of that. As Ed has already said, we've got quite a lot of large marketing comms now going out to a lot of the target firms and individuals on the skill side. So we are doing that. So we need to make sure we fix it, that, you know, you've all got access to be able to raise that. In terms of where the training is delivered, well, the UK has always been a complicated picture for skills delivery. So you've got some private providers, and they may be in Fenland, they may not be in Fenland, but they're willing, but they already deliver across Fenland. We've got West Suffolk College coming in to run the North Cambridgeshire Training Centre at Metalcraft. Obviously, this will be their new presence in our area. They've previously been mainly in Suffolk. So, you know, providers will go where the work is, where the companies, you know, need it. So, you know, part of the job of the brokerage service within GrowthWorks on skills is to do that joining up. You've got a firm says, I can't train X, Y, and Z. So that's not about universities. Their job is to find a way to get that done.
Well, thank you very much indeed, all our guests, both physical and virtual, for their attendance today. And thank you for your service update report, which is noted. Thank you very much indeed. Might I suggest for everyone we have a 5-minute comfort break, and then we'll resume our meeting. Thank you. Right, we'll progress with item number 7 on the agenda, the Transformation and Communications Portfolio Holder update. This report sets out the Council's progress in delivering the Transformation and Communications Portfolio. I understand there's no presentation on this one, so we'll go straight into a question and answer session. If members have questions of the guest, we will proceed. Councillor Scanlon has his hand up.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the questions about the communications and the attempts to go fully internet integrated with all things, and I can understand that. I've worked in companies where it's gone before. I want to address the situation where people aren't on the internet, they aren't comfortable with the internet, they don't have good telephone reception, so therefore their mobile phones don't work. And I live in such an area where I live, where sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. What is being done to help those people? Because they don't want to be left behind, and it is a great problem for them.
Thank you for that question, Councillor Scanlon. It's something that's actually very important to me, and officers will tell you a point I raise all the time, in that we aren't doing away with the old methods. We are gradually moving with new technology so that more methods are available, but we're not doing away or closing down anything so that people aren't able to communicate with us in the more traditional way. So people can still phone us up and write to us, and it's still possible for you to go through your councillor. Of course, is a great way to communicate with the council. So it's not that we're trying to move everyone to the internet. Far from it, because as you correctly say, there are lots of people who aren't ready for that or may never want to do that, and we have to cater to them too.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, but the perception is, and I'm not saying it's coming from the council, it's coming from outside sources, that yes, that's where we're going. We're going fully integrated on the internet and paperwork disappears. So I'm grateful for the clarification that the old systems aren't being done away with, because it frightens, and I'm in that generation, it frightens some of the older generation that, hang on, I don't know how to use the internet. I don't want to use it. I'm afraid of it. So I absolutely thank you for the clarification that we're not doing away with the old systems. So give people peace of mind. Thank you.
If I could just come back there, because obviously I've got a dual role. One is communications and one is transformation. And in the communications side, whenever we do a press release or information, normally the officers have put in there some confirmation that we're not moving away and leaving anyone behind. But I always try to strengthen that. I often change the wording so that it's very clear to people. But as you say, sometimes people can get worried about that. I don't think with FDC there's any need to worry, because we're not leaving anyone behind.
It's very rich of me, actually. I should have introduced the panel. Thank you, Councillor Tierney, and the good old, of course, we well know. And we also welcome Peter Catchpole, Stephen Beecher, and also Dave Wright. So thank you for that. I'd like to ask a direct question about communication. That we do have a lot of pressure on our local council offices, where people are ringing in with all sorts of queries, and very often it's directed to the central number. Now, from there, we're not quite sure what happens after that. Can you just elaborate on that a little bit, please?
Sure, I'll let one of the officers give more detail, but broadly, we've been changing things so that you can do a lot more through the internet for people who want to use it, and that takes pressure off the main system, if you like. Then we've introduced new call handling systems and new software to help us manage the way that we handle that information, so that fewer people are needed but can work faster, respond more quickly. It's been quite a big change, actually. A lot of investment has gone into improving the system so that we can do exactly what you say, work more quickly under pressure. And I don't know if anybody wants to.
Yeah. Yes, if I can just provide a bit more information. So members will recall that we went live with the sort of My Fenland team in July of 2021, where we brought together numerous teams that had previously been customer facing. So the previous environment and leisure team, assets and property, customer service team, to name a few. And they came under one umbrella. And the reason for that was that previously, prior to that point, customers had to interpret which service they needed to access and indeed identify the number or the email address or the website. This way of bringing all those teams under one umbrella, there was no interpretation needed for the customer. that it was clear there was one central point of access. In doing that, we then changed the job descriptions and the role profiles of that team, so that we're much more customer focused, that we eliminated single points of failure from across the organisation, so we had much greater resilience. But absolutely, to take up Steve's point, that we also took full advantage of the enhancements in technology and the digital approach that we'd successfully implemented. So it was very much a point of form following function rather than the other way around, and then making sure that it worked. So to answer your question directly, Councillor Mason, customers phone in using the 654321 number if they want to access the contact centre, and then depending on the selection, they can either just hold and they'll get through to a member of staff. There are 2 levels of staff now within the structure. Advisors who are able to deal with a plethora of information, any query in relation to the council to a certain level, and then we have technical officers who have a greater depth of knowledge. They work very closely with the services, and the point of that career structure within the service is so that we can free up professional officers within the services themselves, with the greater depth and breadth of questions being answered at the front end. So that's the approach that we've taken, and the feedback that we've received from customers so far has been really positive.
I presume you discourage the use of direct numbers to various parties. Yes, okay, thank you for that. Councillor Wicks, thank you.
On this vein, what feedback do you provide to the people who have rung in, contacted you in any way, which is a very specialist area for an answer? Is there a confirmation email? What form of follow-up is there to these sort of contacts?
Yeah, that's quite a specific question. So I think I'm going to hand over on this one, because I would presume the answer is we respond in the medium that we were talked to, but I'll allow it.
No, absolutely. We do. So if customers are emailing in, they'll get an immediate automated response, and then we'll follow that up. A key point, though, Councillor Wicks, is that we want to ensure that customers aren't ringing progress chasing, because that's an avoidable contact as far as we're concerned. So we're trying to manage customers' expectations at the front end regarding, if we do need to find out some further detailed information, or do need to acquire relevant facts in relation to their case, that we confirm the timescales in which we will do that, so that we're managing expectations about the next stage of the process.
Councillor Booth, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Well, it's a follow-up point on that, because I think PRC1, the indicator, talks about percentage of customer queries resolved at first point of contact. And as I've said before, I think that's a misnomer, because what that actually represents is the fact that you haven't passed that person on to another department within the council, because basically it's just a call login system where that the call's not being handed on. So I think it very much speaks to the point that Councillor Wicks talked about. And I think it's a very crude indicator, and doesn't actually give the right impression from my perspective, because I think what Councillor Wicks is talking about, for example, is you could have a very technical question regarding an environmental health concern, where maybe you need an environmental health officer to come out and investigate an issue. What will happen is that that phone call will be terminated, but there's still further follow-up going on. So you haven't resolved that issue at that first point of contact, which is what that indicator has given us. So I think it needs to be, and I've said this over a number of years, we need to look at those indicators, because they're giving us a false impression of what's actually happening with the service.
I think false impression is unfair. It's an impression. I mean, with most statistics, they measure what they measure, and then you've got to do a little bit more digging to find out more information. And I remember you mentioning this in previous years. You're right. I would welcome you to suggest another performance indicator after the meeting, and then we'll see if we can do it, because more information is useful as long as we're not spending so much time collating information that we're losing work. So it's a good suggestion. I'm sure officers will take it on board. Thank you.
I guess following up on that, we've talked about setting up a task and review group for the KPIs. So obviously that's one we can look at. So I guess if we can capture that, Chair.
Councillor Scanlon.
Thank you. So there's a further question. It's on page 75 of the pack we've received. It says PRC3, percentage of contact centre calls answered within 20 seconds. Baseline is 74.81%. The cumulative performance is 30.3%, but it's given an amber rating. Surely there should be a red rating, because the red rating is 10% or below target. So that's 30% to 74% is more than 10%. It's a 50% thing. So that should be a red rating. Am I correct?
So no, the baseline isn't the target in this instance, and that's because this is an unusual year. So we've sort of been hit from two sides, because in the first instance, the previous year's numbers were artificially inflated due to the fact that there was a COVID pandemic. And so things changed quite rapidly. And as you might imagine, we firsthand had a bit more calls, not as many more as we'd expected calls coming in. But in the second hand, we had a lot more staff to deal with them because we weren't allowed to do face-to-face meetings, and that meant things could be answered. So it artificially inflated the number in the first instance. And then in the last year, we've been going through this fairly major change where I think we expected a dip. And it's a dip we've been working on. So you can see from the chart that we set a lower, 40%, I think it was, 40% rating. And that was to bear in mind that we did expect a dip while staff got used to the new system. But that's been changing really quickly. Since it was implemented, the numbers are coming up, and I fully expect them to continue to rise. So I think that reflects just an unusual year rather than a problem. But of course, we've got to keep an eye on it.
Yeah, I totally agree. But I think you could have added a note there on that sheet to say that these figures are skewed because of COVID and the problems that arose from it. But anyone reading that chart will say that's not amber, that's a red, because the figures are out. Even at 10% to 30% is 25%. So that's over.
So if you just check the chart, you'll see that the target is set at 40%, which does make it an amber, and it does say it on the chart. But I accept it wasn't clearly explained, and it could have been spelled out a bit better.
Yes, thank you.
Can I ask, is there a way of collecting data from the number of people that ring in and hang up? This might be important for people that are not actually being serviced because they're just frustrated with waiting too long on the end of a telephone line.
I'm sure we record calls in. I'll let Anna fill in a minute. But of course, if somebody just rings and hangs up, it's hard to know why they hung up or if they even called the right number. But do we cover that at all, Anna?
So it's not one of our key performance indicators about the call abandonment rate, but what we do record, you'll see on page 75 of the report, is PRC4, which is percentage of contact centre calls handled, and that's the way round that we look at it rather than the abandonment rate. But obviously, if we identify that there is a significantly high abandonment rate, we want to do some further investigatory work around what's caused that sudden service peak, because what we try and do clearly is to understand what drives customer behaviour, why customers phone into the contact centre or indeed access services online or request appointments face-to-face, so that we can get in front of some of that, so we can promote those services so that customers who can and have the ability to can self-serve. And we're constantly looking at that improvement journey so that we can consider what the customer's experience has been and enhance that wherever possible by being more responsive. So addressing that very point.
Thank you. There's always room for improvement, isn't there? Thank you. Councillor Booth, please.
Thank you, Chair. Again, regarding the statistics, I think I've raised this before, where with the green rating, you've got an allowance of 5%. And I've said, I think previously, that you don't normally get an allowance. What you will have is figures that will determine if it's green, amber or red. And what you're doing is you're giving yourself extra wiggle room, I suppose. So wherever I've worked with companies, you don't have that sort of like tolerance factor. You just build it into the factors or your rating factors. So it seems to me you're actually overcomplicating things. But all it will mean is, for example, that your acceptable rate is reduced by 5%, like the target. So I think that is what is causing some of the confusion. And I can see, like, for example, why people sort of saying, well, it shouldn't be amber, it should be red, because you've got your cumulative performance, you've got your baseline, and then you've got these factors. So I think that also needs to be looked at. From my personal perspective, normally you'd have the amber would be 0 to 10% outside of target, and then the red would be above 10% of target. You wouldn't actually have a tolerance on your green rating. So just an
You have said it before, and thank you for that. As Anna's just pointed out to me, this is a corporate way that we work. So this isn't just done with these numbers. But I think most people would understand that it's all about how you look at the numbers. We could set no percentage, but set the target a bit lower. You know, there's a lot of things you could do. I think the information is there and it's reasonably clear, which is the important thing. And then we could debate the exact way that we present the numbers. You know, if ONS were to make a recommendation that they wanted those numbers not to happen throughout our corporate decision making or our corporate policy, then we'd have a look at that. But that would be a suggestion you guys could make if you wanted to.
But I guess part of the task and finish group with the KPIs, it's something we can look at. But it's really around the green rating that you've got an extra tolerance that I think just isn't needed. You just lower what your baseline target is. But Chair, I've just got a couple of other questions, if I may. Yeah. So I think it's something like page 76, is it, or 73 maybe. You've got the statement, improve risk and compliance management within the ICT service, but you don't say how. So what have you done to improve it? I'm just intrigued.
Somebody want to take that?
I suppose in the way of compliance, we do meet all of the PSN and PCI DSS compliance rating, and we always look out for more risk, any that leads extra cyber risk at the moment with the Ukraine situation. So we do keep our eyes on new risks coming in, which are service specific, which are operational.
So you haven't introduced like a new way of looking at risk and compliance in ICT. It's just the day-to-day management of it. You feel you're keeping up to speed with new and emerging threats.
That is down as a future project. It's something we're working on at the moment.
Right. Okay. And I guess just on the PCI DSS, that is an extremely complex area. How confident are we that we've achieved what we need to there? Because I've got previous work colleagues that were pulling their hair out trying to work out how you can make sure that you comply with all the various different legislation. So have we had like a peer review or anyone else done a review from external?
Currently, we're working with external penetration testers. We're in the process of that at the moment. So they give us their review. They try to hack into our systems and they give us a written statement, which we then hand on to the Cabinet Office. And then if there's anything that needs fixing, we do that mediation before we send the submission into the PSN.
Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Booth again.
Yeah. Old chestnut again, complaints data. So I read that you're going to be providing some new data on complaints from 1st of April. It's just disappointing we haven't got anything for this meeting because, as Peter's told us, you already have the information captured. It's a shame that we haven't got something that you could present to us today. But can I have your assurances that from the 1st of April, we're going to get regular updates on breakdown of complaints data?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Booth. You have mentioned this before. I can only apologise that the information is not there now. You do have, I will confirm that we are going to send that for you in future. And if you don't like the way it's presented, then we'll work with you to try and keep improving it. It is something I have raised with officers and we will be doing it. So apologies that you haven't got it today, but I think you'll be pleased next time. Thank you.
Right. From the number of questions been asked, or so few, it's quite obvious that we are satisfied with the progress that's been made. I think it was reflected at full council that the clarity of information coming through now is very, very good. And we do congratulate officers and portfolio holder on the progress they've made. So thank you very much, and your progress report is noted. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for those comments. There was something I wanted to raise with ONS that hopefully you might consider. It's obviously entirely up to you what you do, but we have a lot of online forms which we've been adding and we've been improving on. And it will be quite useful if ONS would perhaps have a look at those forms and test them a little to see if you can find any holes in them. We can always get officers to do it, but this is a way for people perhaps who haven't seen them developed, and I think that will be really useful. So if any of you have the time to test the online forms and then give us some feedback, we'd welcome that.
Councillor Scanlon.
Can I come back to you on that? Could you give us a list of all the forms that are available so that we can test them?
Thank you. We will do that. Thanks.
No, we have the time. Thank you. We'll now move on to item number 8, the future work programme on pages 77 to 86. To consider the draft work programme for overview and scrutiny panel 2021-22. In response to members' requests, the programme has been extended. I think we have got a full programme to the end of the year, but I will invite comments if there are any, please. Councillor Scanlon.
Thank you, Chairman. We've got April the 28th as the, the pre-meet for May the 9th. The agenda for that programme seems to be pretty full. The cultural strategy, commercial investment, but is there enough within that programme to keep us busy for the day? Is there enough data available to us to make that a full meeting?
I don't know if you want to answer that one. We have to find out, but yeah, okay. Noted, thank you. Absolutely.
Just on that, I guess the commercial investment strategy investment board is going to be the main item for discussion. We've been asking for updates on that. It will be 1 year, so I imagine that's going to be quite a meaty discussion point. With regards to culture strategy, obviously that's more driven by the Arts Council, isn't it? Because we're sort of custodians, I think is a good way of describing it.
Yeah.
Again, that's fairly new, so I'm not sure that there'll be much to discuss on that, but I think there should be on the investment strategy involved.
Yeah, I think the investment strategy will take up quite a bit of our time, actually, and it's something we've all been looking forward to addressing. So,
the housing enforcement one won't be very long, because
no.
I don't think there's much update on that at this moment in time. It certainly wasn't from Councillor Hoy at the last one on it.
But I still think it'll be quite a full meeting, so we'll leave that as it is. Yep.
It's on that, Chair. I assume the task and finish group is just to agree the terms of reference for that, so we can move that item forward, and membership, I guess, as well.
Thank you. In which case, we move on to item 9.
Just one quick
Yeah,
one. I
sorry,
see the informal pre-meet on Tuesday rather than a Monday. Is that 3rd of May?
Monday,
All right. Okay.
Probably Monday, yes. Item 9, items which the chairman has under item 3 deemed urgent. There are none. So I thank you all for your attendance today, and I'll formally close the meeting at 3:32. Thank you very much for your attendance.